So, I am Jason McCool. I'm a musician, composer, actor, and according to my business card, an arts engagement strategist. If anyone knows what that is, if you can see me after and let me know, that'd be terrific. No, but seriously, I am here to talk about what it means to engage with the arts with a focus on social media, because as all you guys know, there is no social media without me, right? There's going to be a lot of jokes like that. So social media and the arts. But before I begin, I want to make a bold statement which you may find surprising. The arts are not for everyone. Now, why would I start out a presentation on the arts with that statement? Well, my friends, I've actually conducted quite a lot of scientific research on this, and I'm here to share with you what I have learned. But first I need to conduct a little experiment, a little hocus pocus focus group, a little exit poll of the human soul, if you will. I need you all to take your right hand, and I need you to put it somewhere right above your left breastbone right there. And you should feel a ticking. Does everyone feel that? Yeah. Okay. So you do? Okay, good. If you don't, you might be Dick Cheney. Oh, come on. If you feel, I know, politics, I'm a total political junkie, so I can't wait for the other speeches. If you do feel that, then you are hereby qualified to be engaged in the arts. Okay, so the arts are for people who are alive. It's true. Clinical research has proven that if you are a human being, then the arts have the potential to move you, to make you feel your soul on a deep, rich level, even to change your life. I don't care what country you come from, what city, what neighborhood, what your race is, whether you are 4 or 94, whether it's investing time in a museum, absorbing yourself in a truly great symphony or chamber work, reading a novel, dancing, being danced, watching dance, or any other of the infinite varieties found in artistic expression. Engaging in the arts is really, it's about fully experiencing being alive. Okay, what the author Diane Ackerman would call living not just the length of your lives, but the width of them as well. And I love that quote from Diane Ackerman. So I'll take a second look at that. Okay, ever since there have been human beings, there have been artists, because we've always been asking ourselves where we came from, what we're here for, looking for ways to cope with the emotional turmoil of the world, but mostly we seek out ways to make this crazy ride called life just a little bit more pleasurable. Making music, telling stories, painting, dancing, building things, creating yummy food to eat, and awesome drinks to drink, even the search for God. These are part of what it means to be human, and I fervently believe that we should all soak up as much of it as we can. Can I get a witness?
On the yummy food.
On the yummy food, just the food, none of the other stuff. I love this quote from Mstislav Rostropovich, who was a great cellist, former conductor of the National Symphony. And you see him in 1989 playing Bach cello suites at the demolition of the Berlin Wall. And he said, music and art are a whole spiritual world in Russia. In Russia, when people go to a concert, they don't go to it as an attraction, as an entertainment, but to feel life. Love that quote. So, it's true, folks, I am the evangelizer for the arts, which is incredibly cool for me because the stuff that I'm selling, I'm not selling, like dish soap. Nothing against anyone who sells dish soap. But I'm selling some of the best stuff to ever come from human beings. I'm selling Da Vinci. I'm selling Mozart. I'm selling Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare. I'm selling Caravaggio. I'm selling John Coltrane. I'm even selling that guy who made the little foam art on your cappuccino this morning, because it's about an awareness of that kind of stuff. Okay, but this is a challenge at some points because it is difficult to fight against really what the corporate mass media, profit-driven industry wants us to know about. We're force-fed all these names and images and expected to keep up with a really endless, never-ending stream of celebrity gossip. And we are being robbed, in my humble opinion, of precious time in that process. And I love this quote from E.E. Cummings: to be nobody but yourself in a world that's doing its best to make you somebody else is to fight the hardest battle you are ever going to fight. Never stop fighting. Okay, so enough preaching. We're here to talk about social media. You know, we are so lucky to live in a city where social media is used in such a positive manner in a way that enhances the quality and indeed the width of all of our lives. Social Media Club of DC's slogan is, if you get it, share it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love this because it meshes absolutely perfectly with what we need to be doing in the arts. Leonard Bernstein, the great composer, educator, in the 1950s had a show on primetime television that was all about music education and music appreciation, and people watched it. Can you imagine that today? He would actually deconstruct Beethoven's symphony on primetime TV. This is a quote from Bernstein. He said, "It's not only music that I feel compelled to share, but sunsets and jokes and cracked crab. Whatever I enjoy, I want others to enjoy. At least one other person, but preferably 1,000 or 1,000,000. So that's really the same kind of stuff that we're talking about in social media. Also, artists are naturally passionate people, and we love talking about ourselves. Quite often when we look in the mirror, we like what we see. Get it? Like? Okay, so art is communication, and because social media is such a great tool for facilitating conversation and engagement, it is a perfect fit. However, up until now, the dominant paradigm in the arts marketing world has been appealing to the already converted, preaching to the choir. But with the drastic cuts to arts education, often for the sake of standardized testing, you guys probably know about that, we can no longer depend upon a choir to preach to. Audiences with the traditional arts are dying, and what happens when they go? What are we left with? Studies show that Americans who didn't grow up with an appreciation of the arts are unlikely to seek it out on their own, and therefore what happens is corporatized culture, who provides us with this never-ending stream of high-quality, thought-provoking programming enters in. Pageant Mom's Makeover Experiment. Did anyone see it? Can't wait for the sequel. So, how is social media being used to promote the arts? Well, it's not a magic pill, but it can be used effectively as part of a large-scale marketing and rebranding effort, which I will get into. In a broad sense, I would argue it's the same ways we see other fields using social media. Advocacy, mobilizing your brand evangelizers to share your message. Conversations. Obviously, art is particularly good at engendering discussion. Audience engagement, encouraging people to feel that they're an essential part of the artistic process. And also using the power of the web to establish and maintain virtual communities. Everyone in this room knows that DC is one of the most active cities in the country in terms of social media, but we're also fortunate that we live in one of the absolute best cities in the country for art. And artists are moving here from all around the country in order to be a part of what we have going on here. We have dozens of museums and galleries covering many different styles, most of which are absolutely free. We have 3 world-class symphony orchestras within 40 miles of where we are. About 2 years ago, I started using this hashtag DCArts, along with a good friend of mine, some of you may know Chelsea Christensen, Chelsea DC. And it's become an incredible way to share what you're doing. If you're ever out at any sort of arts or culture event in DC, use this hashtag. It is absolutely blown up on Twitter. I have it on my tweet deck, and it's just like every 5 minutes there seems to be someone tweeting about something in DC Arts. And it's just, you have an idea and follow through with it like that, and it's just been so cool. Also, those of us in the arts community just got word today that Jack Evans just approved a $10 million bump in arts funding for DC. So if you're a supporter of the arts, you might want to throw a tweet or an email at him, because that's really freaking fantastic. Jack Evans Award 2. In terms of theater, I like this. You know, the most interesting guy in the world says, I don't always watch 3D movies, but when I do, I go to live theater. We are second only to New York City in terms of the amount of work being produced here. That's right, DC theater is the second biggest theater market in the entire United States. How is the theater community using Twitter? Using social media? Well, we have incredibly active streams on hashtag 2AMT, that stands for 2AM Theater. Also the new play hashtag, incredibly active. People all around the country, indeed all around the world, talking about contemporary theater and new plays. We have this thing called tweet seats, where you get a special section of the theater who people will be sort of tweeting away lines from the play and their impressions and whatnot, which really kind of pisses off a lot of theater goers to no end. So I would say the jury's still out on that one, but at least it is one way that social media is being used. Okay, who is getting it nationally? This is just like kind of off the top of my head. Well, the Brooklyn Museum has over 350,000 followers. The New York Philharmonic, I was in New York for the 10th anniversary of 9/11, and they had, while people were outside waiting for tickets, they put up a big, you guys have seen these, because I know we've run them at other SMC events, where you have a big screen and any of the live tweets with the hashtags come up. So they're getting it right. San Francisco Symphony, Chicago Symphony, the LA Philharmonic, this great Argentinian conductor Gustavo Dudamel. Anyone heard of Dudamel? He's pretty awesome, and people are making, paying a lot of attention to that stuff. The Cincinnati Symphony had an incredible use of hashtag with their Mozart and Mahler series. The Nashville Symphony did a concert at Carnegie Hall last week, and they're using social media. The New World Symphony in Miami, Classical Revolution, is putting classical chamber music inside venues where young people can go and like drink beer and listen to Bach, and it's amazing. So percussion, just a whole bunch of stuff. Les Poissons Rouge in New York, very hit venue, using social media. Some of my favorite advocates, my friend Mara Lafferty out in San Francisco, Adaptastration, Kickassical, Margie Waller in Cincinnati. I'll maybe send these slides to SMC too. I would ask you guys a personal favor, if you all follow Nat Philharmonic. I just picked up their Twitter feed a few weeks ago, so I'm trying to build that feed and see what we can do with promoting that organization in DC, Nat Philharmonic. Who's getting it right in DC? Again, just a few of people came off the top of my head. My good friend Philippa Hughes, so you may know Philippa, who runs Pink Line Project, is doing incredible advocacy work in DC. As I mentioned, Chelsea, DC. A Way of Life, where's JR? There you are. Okay. So my brother, who I just saw him yesterday at another arts and social media event, so he's making the rounds, doing great stuff. Gwyneth Sullivan, a lot of people. You guys probably know about BYT, DCist, We Love DC. Institutions, again, too many to name individually, but the National Endowment for the Arts. District Karaoke, which I helped set up in Policy DC, and Policy has been amazing about helping us host that event, and that has absolutely blown up. If you don't know about District Karaoke yet, we're using social media for that. Some of the other organizations. I want to talk a little bit about the rebranding of classical music. That is particularly what I'm working on in my kind of social media career. Classical music has a particularly bad image problem. A majority of Americans think classical music is not fun, boring. They think it's inaccessible unless you already know a lot about the music. They think it's elitist, it's meant only for rich, white, and old people. They think it's meant only for specialists, people who already get it. They think it's old, they think it's foreign, the music of dead white European males. They think it's expensive. They think it's long, impossible to follow for people with short attention spans. Worst of all, especially among young audiences, people think that it is not cool. They think that it is lame. See, I knew that Cartman would get a little chuckle for Cartman. Some people think that if they go to an orchestra concert, this might happen. And apologies to any McCaniacs out there. They might fall asleep. The truth is that none of that is the fault of the music itself. It is the fault of the packaging. I personally guarantee you that Beethoven's music would shake you to your core if you figured out how to listen to it. I like to blast it in my car. In fact, I was driving here today and I had the finale of Beethoven's Fifth. Totally, no, that's me. And I got my windows down, and it is just absolutely soul-shaking music. It's fantastic. I really like what this guy Ben Zander is doing in Boston. And Ben Zander is a conductor. He's actually British, but he runs the Boston Philharmonic. He has an incredible TED Talk. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but he in his talk says that classical music appeals to approximately 3% of the people in the United States right now. The classical music industry says if only we could bump that up to 4%, all of our problems would be over. And he's like, well, what if we changed our assumption? What if we were convinced ourselves that 100% of the people love classical music, they just don't know it yet? That's what we have to do. That's the attitude we have to go into it with. So then I was just reading this thing where he actually was in an airport terminal and he went up to 60 different people with a set of headphones and played the opening of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. And people were like, what is this? I've never heard it. It's amazing. You know, so that's tough, you know, but that's what needs to be done. What if we were to rebrand classical music as not boring but exhilarating, which it is, as accessible to any human being with functioning ears, as not elitist? Again, don't blame the music for the packaging. Beauty is beauty. It is new. There are hundreds of young composers writing music for orchestra. We're surrounded by influences from film scores to commercials to pop music. Bands like Radiohead are obsessed with classical music. It can be dirt cheap, especially for young people. I once read that a complete box set of the Beethoven symphonies costs under 20 bucks, and this world is not crap. Like, you know, that's pretty amazing. It doesn't have to be expensive. It's not always long, but even if it is, that can be part of the appeal. When else do you get to actually sit and focus on something for that long without lifting a finger? Classical music is also loaded with passion. Almost everyone responds to passion. Passion is cool. Okay? Classical music is being rebranded in images. What can great Beethoven feel like? It can feel like that guy. I love this quote from Alex Ross, who said the classical business needs to start thinking of itself not as a luxury item, but as an essential part of the average thinking person's life. Across the country, music making is at a high level, but it lacks a sense of passion, spontaneity, intellectual risk. To cultivate such values would not betray the great composers of the repertory, it would do them justice. What do we need in the arts? Broadening a little bit, we need your voice, we need your involvement. We can't make art in a vacuum just talking amongst ourselves. We need people to get involved. A few examples of the way that that's been doing, of the way that people have been doing that, especially locally. Just last week at the University of Maryland, and you can shout at them at Turks Music, the choreographer Liz Lerman took the Debussy piece, The Prelude of the Afternoon of Vaughn, had the orchestra, the student orchestra, memorize it and choreograph them performing as a dance, and they're playing their instruments like sort of like marching band music, but like, you know, better. And it was extraordinary. It's amazing. Margie Waller in Cincinnati, and the mission statement is too small to read, but it talks about building a case for funding in the arts. And she got together a whole bunch of artists and community members, and they painted the streets in Cincinnati. You probably have seen the flash mob video from the Hallelujah Chorus that was put up by the Opera Theater of Philadelphia, in which 7.5 million people have watched that on YouTube. I mean, extraordinary amount of community involvement there. They also saw their funding go up, skyrocket after that event. Pink Line Project, as I mentioned, Philippa Hughes just finished her Luminate Anacostia last week in Anacostia, where she took over a giant warehouse that was formerly a police evidence storeroom. Close to 5,000 people showed up for that. And she played, you know, DJs did sets. They had artists putting their stuff up all around the warehouse. So some shots from that. I mean, it was absolutely packed. And then the Cherry Blast was also affiliated with that. So people will show up if you present it in a right way, and I think arts organizations need to start listening to that. This was a project that I put together last year called OMG, a theatrical experiment about big questions. And we crowdsourced these questions related to spirituality via social media channels, via just actually walking up to strangers on the street. We came up with 6 questions that we asked people. We wanted to know, how do you define yourself? What makes you feel most alive? What are you most proud of? What brings you hope? What does life expect of you? And if you have an image of God, what is it? And then we staged their responses. So that was quite literally a crowdsourcing, a social media incorporation into the artistic process. Get into it, get involved, as James Brown would say. Here are 4 ridiculously easy ways to participate in the creative life of your community. Number 1, it sounds obvious, but I gotta say it, show up, buy a ticket, get a comp, say hello, go talk to the artists, invest your time, invest your mind, share it using social media. I mean, that's the whole point. That's why we're all here, because we want to share what we love. That's it. So thank you so much for indulging me in my time, and I don't know if there's a time for a question or two, or we need to move.
No, go ahead. Any questions? How about some upcoming events that we could all check out?
Oh man, so I would just say the first thing is get on DC Arts. Check out that hashtag. We have the Fringe Festival is coming up, I think in July that usually starts down at Fort Fringe. The Source Festival right across the street. Has anyone seen any shows at Source? You know what's so amazing about this area too? Here we are in this beautiful establishment, right? Like, I moved to DC like about 10 years ago. Does anyone remember what 14th Street looked 10 years ago?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a dung heap. You know, people would say, oh, you don't want to go to that neighborhood right now. You know, well, you know what happened? Studio Theater, a few blocks down, expanded and it became a real center. All of a sudden, people started moving there because it was hip, it was trendy. Restaurants started opening. Once the restaurants started opening, the developers kind of moved in. Okay, and we see this process a lot in the arts, and then what happens is the artists get kicked out because they can't afford the rent. So, I mean, look at like Greenwich Village in the 60s. Greenwich Village is cool and is expensive now in New York because it was where the artists used to hang out. But artists don't live in Greenwich Village. Can't afford it, they live in Brooklyn. Back to your question. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of theater in DC this summer. That's the most obvious thing I think. Yeah?
So other than this place, did you just mention
the Source is right here.
Okay.
Studio Theater is on 14th and P.
Where's some other places to listen to classical music around?
The National Symphony Orchestra. I would definitely, and they're in residence at the Kennedy Center. I would say Strathmore. If you've never been to Strathmore, you've got to check out Strathmore. I am just like blown away on a night-to-night basis by the quality of their programming. And they're also active on Twitter. The National Philharmonic is in residence there, also the Baltimore Symphony. I'm going to be doing pre-concert lectures for the Baltimore Symphony starting in September, so I would love it if any of you guys came out. They're going to be on a Saturday nights, like once a month, starting in September. So maybe look at the website for that. Baltimore Symphony is an awesome group. Yeah, Kennedy Center. I mean, we're so fortunate to have so many options in the center. Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time.